recording.
Call the meeting to order, please. This regularly scheduled meeting of the Architect Committee of the Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners is taking place at 308 Feathering-Gill Hall at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. A notice of this committee meeting was posted on the board website on September 25th, 2017. Meeting is called to order.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Rick Thompson.
Present.
Brian Tibbs.
Present.
Frank Waxter.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I guess on our agenda, new business are applications and audits for review, discussion, and signature.
And those are on your iPads, actually, right, Wanda?
Yes, all 17.
As a separate folder. You
Wow.
have applications to review. Y'all can do those independently
I thought you didn't have any.
after the meeting.
No.
We don't have to do that at the meeting right now.
Right, no, you can just do those independently afterwards. But they are on your iPads. So.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to scroll through there and find those. All right, then the next order of business is the potential law, rule, and policy changes.
Page 6. You want us to want me to guide you through?
Page 6.
Page 6, right?
Right.
And the first item under potential law changes, this is something that's been on here in the past. It's on here again. Adding definitions of practice and incidental practice provisions to the law. And on the following pages, you do have the model language developed by NCARB, NCAAS, and CLAR for each profession. And we've also got the definitions and incidental practice provisions from our border states and other southeastern states, so just states in our region. Otherwise, it would have been kind of overwhelming if we did all U.S. jurisdictions. Yeah, I mean, it's enough as it is, but this at least tells you in the southeastern U.S. and Missouri, these are the definitions. And you'll see most states either have an incidental practice provision or just an exemption provision. So it's kind of a mix. Some states don't use that incidental practice language at all. It just says for architects, engineers are exempt from our statute and vice versa. So that's two different ways of handling it. But of the states that do use incidental practice language, most of them don't define it. There's only two exceptions to that, and those are Alabama and Missouri. If you look at the Alabama statute on page 14, they do have, this is actually a rule, not part of their statute. It's in their rules. 100X 4.12 at the bottom of page 14 defines incidental practice of engineering. And then also for Missouri on page 19, same on your iPad. Page 19 for Missouri, it's in their statute. They actually, under definitions, they have a definition of incidental practice, which is not as helpful as Alabama's, I would say, but at least they attempted to define it. Most states don't even attempt to define it. So that's just for your information and discussion. If you want to discuss potentially attempting to add definitions for Tennessee, now's the time to do so. If you want to discuss that. But the NCAR model actually does include incidental practice language. The other two model law definitions do not.
Well, I'll say I've always been a proponent of at least the architects defining themselves. But there's a lot of pushback to that. was gonna, since Ashley's here, and I don't wanna put you on the spot, but where's the AIA, or at least AIA Tennessee?
The board, I believe, in 2015, I have a memo with me, but with the AIA policies and procedures, shall have attached it. This is a support document for another issue, but they do support the in-car model. Now, we, I believe in 2015, we weren't out to pursue it. The board asked the opinion of, the licensing board asked the opinion of the state board. And so the state board said that if we're going to do something like that, they would support the in-car model language.
Now, Rick, y'all remind me, but it seems like when this has come up before, we've kind of gotten to that point. And then we've got engineers and landscapers and interiors that don't want to do it. Right. We're kind of like, why are we the only one? And we'd like the other guys to come around, but I don't see them jumping on that. Now, maybe the landscapes are getting a little more, or a little closer to it, maybe. And I haven't heard the engineers say one way or another, but Mr. Campbell here, I'm pretty sure is not ready to defining engineering. So it's either we pursue it on our own and forget about it, or quit hashing it out every year.
It'd be kind of difficult to adopt a definition for one profession without defining the others, it seems like.
Well, somebody always has to break through that glass ceiling, right?
Yeah.
So, I understand why some people don't want to define their professions because they don't really know what they are. I'm just kidding. But I don't have a problem with the definition, especially the in-car model law. It doesn't bother me, but we can talk about it more if you want to, or we can try to dig into it. So that's what we want to do.
It's funny, the in-car model law, the incidental practice provision, says provided that the practice of architecture shall not include the practice of engineering as defined in, and that's where you put the statute reference in. Of course, we can't do that because we don't have a definition of engineering. So we would have to sort of tweak the model language a bit, but I'm sure every state's done that, so I'm not sure how we would accomplish that.
In your research, I'm guessing that you didn't check to see ones that had accepted a model law or definition for architects that they've done the same for the other professions. You know, there's a lot of boards that are only architectural boards. But I don't know if that really makes a difference.
I haven't looked at Mississippi, but they're usually kind of in the forefront on a lot of these issues.
Is there not an issue, just speaking out of turn, is there not an issue a couple of meetings back where you all were discussing this, the matter came up, this is how it got back on the agenda, specific issue?
Well, that same question that Frank had about.
No, I want to say that maybe Ricky brought it up.
It was, yeah.
Okay.
I think it was in regard to maybe complaint matters regarding
that's
practice
fine.
outside areas of competence.
Okay.
That's usually where this comes up.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was thinking out of turn.
No, you're not.
Like from a legal standpoint, if you've defined what the profession is, then it's a lot easier to deal with, from what I understand.
Mr. Campbell.
Yeah,
Like it. Logical.
I don't want to discourage you all from going down whatever path you will go on, but it seems like the arguments and disagreements that we have are still going to be the same arguments and disagreements that we have. Foundations, some of the other issues that we seem to, even if we define it, we're still going to have those disagreements. I think if there's and we talk about that there's a legal issue for that if we go to court. Well, my only concern with that is, how many times have we really had a legal issue that we're going, I mean, out of 17,000 people that we have registered total, or whatever the number is, and every year we continue to redo that. I mean, we've had, since I've been on the board, almost 7 years now, we've had one hearing that's gone. So, I don't want to poo-poo the idea necessarily, but the more you define it, it seems like that we are putting a hard line where I'm not sure a hard line is warranted based on the evidence and based on the data. But if, and we certainly can all get together at another time as architects and engineers and discuss the pros and cons a little bit more. I know Steve's kind of in favor of it, and he's got some reasons for that. And, you know, I'm not. So we're kind of divided as well. I mean, if I'm the, you know, if I'm the lone person against it, then, but I just don't see the overwhelming evidence that we need to do it. And for some reason, this board's not done it over the last however many years it's been in existence, which kind of says something to me. And I've not been able to find a reason why they didn't do anything. Or so anyway, I'll shut up after that. Since my name got referenced twice, I'm going to go ahead.
Right on the end.
Yeah, I raised my hand. I was quiet.
Well, one thing interesting to me about the ones that do have a definition is Alabama actually carries theirs a little further than everybody else and includes construction observation.
Yeah.
As the practice part. And that, well, I've been a proponent of that, but I haven't even gotten very far. But I think that's an important part of the process, is that the design professional carries through the construction of the project. Because a lot of things that happen that shouldn't happen in that gap that's not covered. But there's a lot of people that, you know, if you're 500 miles away from, if I'm doing a job in Mountain City, I really don't want to run up there and inspect the job. I personally would do it, but I'm just saying there's a lot of people that if they're not close to wherever the project is, they just soon not go. And it is an expense. I think there's a responsibility there also, and even a liability. But I'm not. We didn't even define ourselves, so carrying it further here would be asking a lot. But
Louisiana is similar, and we're doing a large retail project down there. I can't even tell you how many they require individual permits for every box, every single thing that's in there. And the way the law is written is you have to do field observations. Right. And so you've got either you can coordinate several of them at one time, or if they're not ready, then you got to go back down there. But you've got to show them records, minutes, photographs, the whole package. Is very similar. If you've got multiple projects going on and you've got to do the construction observation, you got to go do it, or you're in violation, and you won't get a CO.
yeah, no,
Which is worse than being in violation to a fine.
given the present political climate, I would think it'd be really hard for us to try to do something like that, because it would have the appearance of trying to create more work for yourself as compared to what's going on right now. So we sure don't want it. But even though I think it's necessary, I don't think it could ever get anywhere. I mean, if you do a state project, you're required to do it. Most clients want you to do it. They're willing to pay for it, but then there's a lot of contractor developed projects where they don't want you. They don't want you there.
The only time they want you on the job is when the payout has to go to the bank. You go sign off on it. Hopefully. Well, I don't know. I mean, where are we on this? Do we need to chat about it as engineers and architects and everybody? Or, I mean, I don't, well, I would really like to do a definition of what that the practice of architecture is, but if legally we can't do that, I mean, we could as architects, but if we use the total model law, like John said, we cannot have a practice of engineering definition because we don't have that. So, you know, this language obviously can be modified however we want it to be. This is just their model law.
Looking through Alabama and Georgia, actually, I didn't get to Mississippi yet, but they, like I guess John had brought up, Alabama's maybe a better way to look at it, which it just doesn't reference specifically, you know, how far into engineering goes, you know. So it kind of leaves us. To me, it hits it better what the NCARB was trying to say without having to go back. It's on page 14. I was going to look at Mississippi. Is Mississippi in here too? Or?
It is.
Yeah, there it is. No, so I'll look at Mississippi since you also.
Yeah, I think Alabama definitely had the best
Yeah.
definition of incidental practice, for sure.
Something about how Mississippi starts out, I'm not crazy about. Architect.
Well, let me ask John, let's say we
No, it's not.
vote to pursue this, what drawbacks do you see? I mean, I heard you say it'd be hard to do it without everybody. I'm assuming that's because of that bracket that you got to fill in. Are there any?
Well, I think,
pitfalls you see?
yeah, like, I mean, we could try to pursue it through the department as a legislative proposal. But like you said, I mean, it might be perceived as somehow trying to, as anti-competitive, yeah. If we attempt to, I mean, it might be perceived of that way, that we're trying to restrain trade in some fashions. I don't know how well received that would be within the department. We don't know till we try, I suppose.
Right.
And it's been something that's been on the table for you guys for a while. This is not a new conversation, so it'd be at least worth putting something together, putting it through if you'd like to. If the time isn't right, we can always bring it back up again, and we already have it prepared.
And if we do get it in in our laws, regulations, maybe that'd be a stepping stone for the others to follow. Rick, I'd like to move that we pursue the definition, defining ourselves, lack of a better description, defining architecture using the model law that NCARB is recommending, and maybe y'all might look into this, determining what parts, like Alabama and other states that they have, what would be advantageous for us to do.
I second that. Can I just do discussion?
Sure.
I do think the Alabama, as John has said, is a little bit more clear. So if, along with that, I'd say we hone in on Alabama. I think it's.
Well, there's absolutely no reason we can't use other examples. I mean, NCARB that's just one example.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's close. It just gives a few extra and a less extra too. So, anyway, I give you a second.
Okay. We have a motion to pursue the definition to define our professions based on the NCARB model law, and Brian, a friendly amendment on that to be able to use the Alabama and really any other, but Alabama has a good definition.
And I second too.
You seconded, I'm sorry. Frank made the motion, you seconded. And I guess we have to have a motion.
Do a vote.
All right, let's have a vote. Any other questions?
There's only three of you, so I think it'll pass.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carried.
Okay, the next item on page 6, potential rule changes. Of course, the first is number 2, that's landscape architects. Number 3 is the continuing education rule changes that were discussed at the last meeting, and those are on page 27 on your iPads. That's the notice of rulemaking hearing. And just to kind of recap, I guess you only want to look at the ones that pertain to architects, I would assume. It amends the requirements for architects to require that architects obtain their hours on a calendar year basis, 12 hours per year. And those have to be in all HSW hours. This is following the NCAR
Page
model.
29 for the ones.
And phasing out carryover in 2021. And it does define what's considered health, safety, welfare subjects, again following the NCAR model language. And we also added a provision to allow the board to grant exemptions or extensions for extenuating circumstances, disabilities, things of that nature, and then repeals the alternative continuing professional development option rule, which would become obsolete once these changes are adopted. And the format of it, the structure has been changed a little bit from what we shared at the last meeting. Like, we combined all of the requirements rules into one rule under basic requirements and just broke it out into separate paragraphs for each profession. So it's formatted a little differently, but the substance is the same as what you saw previously.
And the rule format changes came from our chief counsel. As far as when you're adding rules, that changes a lot of forms and publications and notices on the website that are already out there. So it was a little easier to kind of streamline things and keep it under the same rule, but break it into separate paragraphs.
Yeah. And hopefully the formatting is clear enough where people aren't going to get confused, and you'll have architects following the engineers' requirements and vice versa. I think it's pretty clear. I mean, it says basic requirements of architects. And
if there is concern that they should be separate rules, I'm not saying that it's not possible.
Right.
It's just a little bit more difficult. So you'd have to propose a change to the table of contents, and our chief counsel just advised
I
not
agree.
doing that.
It's helpful if we can keep the numbering consistent. I agree with that. I think that's definitely helpful. The reason I didn't break it out that way originally was just I was afraid of confusion. Which rule do I follow?
Yeah.
But this should be clear, I would think. I mean, we're dealing with educated people, so it should be clear.
Well, actually, I've got another question for you. One of the bigger things in the architectural part of this change is requiring all hours to be HSW.
Right.
Does AI Tennessee or the architects have any heartburn with that?
They haven't had a position on this. We really haven't discussed it. So we usually try, at our conference, we try to get as many, close to 18 hours of learning, and it's 15 of those are HSW. So I can take a look. I believe AIA National requires any AIA member, you have to have 18 hours of HSW. So
Is that per year, calendar year, or?
I don't have that question. Let me look it up. Hang on. So, I was not prepared for that question. So, right now we don't have anything. I've sent this to the leaders to see if they have any issues with it. To me, I can't speak for the board. So,
Right. Well, right now,
I'll be able to tell you more probably on Friday.
our change would go from 7 to all.
Right.
The engineers are sticking with 7. Or at least the way I'm reading it. The landscape architects are sticking with 7. even though Blair has suggested changing that to 9. And the interior, they're just staying the same too. So it's mainly the architects are the ones that's adding HSW. And I'm all for it. If I could have one person.
Right. I can follow up with executive committee leaders and see. I just can't give you the answer. I don't want to speak back to where without talking to them first.
But the in-car model does require all HSW hours, and the majority of states are following the in-car
They're
model.
changing that.
Yeah, so it would not be uncommon to require that.
Only about 35 pages long.
You know, I think where we were, I had less problem with the acceptance of the 12 HSWs because, gosh, if you look at what's out there now, it's primarily what's there is HSW because everybody requires it nationwide. You know, you'll have a few lunch and learns. If you want to get more than 12 hours, go for it. But, you know, I'm supportive of getting 12 hours of HSW. If you want to get 24, I don't care what you get them in. You need to be intelligent in every way you can, as informed in every way you can as HSW subjects are. That's what we do. You know, we're not talking about the botanical gardens of somewhere in Italy. I'm sorry, we just don't do that. I mean, I'd love to talk about it after the meeting, but you know, that's not an HSW. I've had to rule against that before, believe that or not. But I really don't think the 12 hours is the issue, and as far as I'm concerned, personally I don't. But where we have pushed this, we've been talking about this for 3 years, and we keep pushing it because of these rollover hours. And some states just said no more rollover after next year. Get your little wagon together and go get your credits and quit waiting for a year to go. And I'm guilty. I've done the same thing. You know, oh God, I got rollover, great. But other states will not even allow you to use. If your state allows you to use rollovers, they won't accept it. So it's going to be up to the individual how they manage their continuing education. You know, we're licensed in 40 states, and I can tell you, from my perspective, if you just do 12 HSWs a year, calendar year, you're going to meet the, make the mark. Except a couple of them that require 14. So your best bet is to get 14 or 16 or whatever you want to get, because you got the lunch and learn things, which are they're marginal at best, but at least you learn something about some kind of insulation factor in a metal panel. I don't know, but my point is that we're giving, as far as I'm concerned, we're giving enough rollover time. Not doing this to 21? Is that right? Right. 2021. We've been talking about it for 3 years, and now we're going to push it for another 3. Surely that's enough time for someone to figure out how many hours they need to get.
Yeah. We picked that date because we wanted to allow 2 full years for people to use up whatever carryover they might have remaining. Mm-hmm. Because we're anticipating that they'll take effect sometime in 2018, probably late 2018. So, anyways.
Yes.
Okay. 1 hour of continuing education earns 1 LU, which we all know. AIA, architect members are required to complete 18 LUs from the registered providers each year. Of the 18, 12 must be in the topic areas of health, safety, and welfare. So if you're an AIA member, you're covered.
And for those who are not AIA members, you get a lot of pushback from that argument that, AIA does it, but I'm not a member of AIA, so why should I have to do it? Well, it's a state law. You have to do it. So.
Yes. So we're not in conflict.
No.
I knew there was a requirement for a reason. We have the conference. We have so many hours, so then if an architect wanted to come to our conference and get all of their HSWs,
online and get them.
Yes, come online.
Not that hard.
Bookmark that.
So, what's the next step on this, John, on these?
Well, if the board approves the rulemaking hearing notice at this meeting, we could potentially have the hearing in December.
For these and others, right?
Well, the others are proposed rules, is that what you're thinking of, that are in process?
Okay, but this is, okay.
Yeah, we just have the hearing just for the continuing education changes.
Okay.
And if
So,
Oh, go ahead.
Everything that's on this document you're looking at now with the blue and red underline, if the board votes on Friday to move forward with this notice of rulemaking hearing, we'll pick a date which would likely be our December meeting date. And you would vote to approve that, and then the notice will go out to all licensees and the public so that they can come and make public comment on these rules before they would move forward.
Okay.
So any changes to this draft, if you guys have any proposed changes, now would be a good time to mention them, or Friday before we vote on approving the notice.
You guys want to go just read through these again and give yourselves time to wait for Friday? Or if you don't have any comments, whatever you think, we've been knocking
Do we
this
need to
around.
move on this in any way?
Not at the committee meeting. It's Fridays when the board will play.
Yeah.
Call.
But I'm not making any wordsmithing.
If you have any,
today.
yeah.
I don't think we need to do that today.
I have read over it, went half blind doing it, but I thought it was well written and there was a lot of work put into it, so I appreciate what y'all have done.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a problem with it at all.
You want to move on to the next items on page 6? I have 2 questions on here as well. Page 6 from the State Farm Marshal's Office. I wasn't sure where to put these, so I put them on here because they're questions on rules that could lead to clarifying language being added to the rules. So that's the connection there. That's our segue. The first one is on page 6. When a design professional submits building documents to our office, our rules require that they be sealed. However, our rule, and then he cites the State Fire Marshal's Office rule, only references plans and specifications. It does not specifically address any other type of document. It would be helpful to us to have the A&E Board's opinion as to when a seal should be required on documents other than plans and specifications. Specifically, should the following documents be required to be sealed? Change orders and addenda and field changes. We want to be consistent in our requirements. My initial thought is that if a document directs a change to planned construction and the change order or ASI is represented in a document type that must be prepared by a Tennessee registered licensee, then that document should be sealed. He seeks the board's input on that.
My opinion is the change orders and addenda and field changes, be they ASIs or whatever, should be sealed. And I know now the fire marshal, he's asking us a question, but they required us to do that.
Oh, have they? Okay. We've been reevaluating that.
You know, a change order changes your design in some way or other by adding to it or taking away from it. It involves money, addendum, normally it's revisions to your construction documents prior to bidding, and then the field changes by ASI are similar to change orders but don't involve money. But all of them are changes to your construction documents. In my opinion, they should be sealed.
Do you mean the actual drawing that changes it, or sometimes a change order is, something that's descriptive, or a matter of fact, and sometimes the change order has other things in it too, like replace these, you know, change the lighting, to, you know, it could be mechanical issues, electrical issues that we also have to sign. So are you going to everything or just the drawing changes? Or
It's, what's been required of us is if you do a drawing, that's part of it, that the change order references.
And those-
That gets sealed. I don't think anybody argues that. But the change order itself is also sealed. And if it's insignificant, what does it matter? But
I definitely agree with the drawings. Well, I mean, you know, I'm okay with the drawings. When we have all these other things in there, you know, we as the contract holders normally do sign it, but I don't know if I necessarily want to seal all the other consultants. I mean, I'd
Well,
be interested to hear, but like,
that should have their seals on it.
well, I mean, like it could just be, you know, change orders, the official state change order is a listing, you know, and then we sign it at the bottom. And I guess you're saying that needs to be stamped, right?
Right.
And I'm like, that would also have everybody, you know, matter of fact, it may have no architectural changes on it.
Yeah, if your changes involve civil engineering or mechanical engineering, at least they're sealed.
But we're the only ones that sign those. So.
Well, you sign your name at the bottom. That's what I'm saying, that the registered professionals that are making a change need to see the change.
So instead of, like, because normally the way it's
In other words, if I write one and I say, you know, cut the HVAC in half, put my stamp on it.
yeah.
What good is that?
You know how that SBC form is? It's just wants it doesn't want their signature, it wants our architect's signature on it. So that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
it's not looking for theirs. They're, you know, on that change order that goes back to state. Because we're the ones that are, in that case, we're the contract holder. So if we put our seal on it, that's only, it might have any architecture stuff in it. I would say that if we have any architecture stuff in there, we would, you know, stamp the drawings. But you know, I don't know. Maybe maybe I'm getting too in the weeds
There are a lot
here.
of descriptive changes that would make as much of a change as a drawing.
Yeah, you said that would not make or could?
It would.
Yeah, they could make as much. True. Yeah, true.
So, it's just a matter of putting your seal on there.
Well, Rick can be the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, change orders. Typically, a change order, of course, they can be generated by the owner of the contractor, us, or most anyone, but if we generate a change order, it's usually through some type of correspondence documentation. And as we have architects of record are already, we're already pregnant with the project. I mean, you don't have to stamp every single thing, I don't think. Some states require you to, but I don't know why.
And the difference is, to me, is that a change order is a legal document.
Yeah.
And an ASI is a legal document. You could probably debate the addendum, but the addendum becomes a part of an agreement.
It's funny. I would agree to the addendum more than the change order, actually, because because you're changing that contract, you're changing the actual contract documents. But like I said, it's just the way that the SBC form is, and we have to sign every change order, regardless. It could be something that's, you know, totally different, but because we're the contract holder, we have to sign it, and we're not signing our work necessarily. When we put that stamp on it, we're the work of the whole project. Its impact. Not that I guess someone could come back to our, hey, well, you stamped the change order. That means you're all of a sudden responsible for. But they're going to do that anyway. I guess as the contract holder, you know, they're going to come to us first.
So what do we tell the fire marshal? We don't know.
Well, I mean, it's good questions, but you're going to get a lot of. I don't know how many architects we got in Tennessee.
A lot less than you have engineers.
Pardon me.
A lot less than you have engineers.
Oh, thank you. I thought I heard that.
About 3,500, I think.
You probably have
How many
No,
engineers
I'm
we
not
have?
that.
1,700 one
together.
way and 1,700 the other way. Like you.
17,000 or something?
Yeah.
We have 17,000 architects in Tennessee. We're just not all registered.
They're all engineers.
They can't stamp these.
Yeah, they all want to be engineers.
Yeah. That's why they're practicing
They're all
engineering.
incidental engineers.
Incidental.
Incidental practice.
Gosh, I don't know what. I don't know what to tell you.
Come on. Use your discretion. But you're saying they're already requiring you to seal them.
They have been, the reason he's asking the question, I guess somebody's balked at it or something.
Well, they asked this like 2 or 3 months ago, so maybe since then they've got an opinion on it. I don't know.
So,
Are you hooked up to the internet?
On this? Yeah, there, I guess. Yes, sir.
So this again may be another thing that we all need to try to get together on. I spoke to a thing of building officials, and I know the fire marshal's kind of the ultimate building officials, and they ask a question that's similar to some of this, and it says, how do we know the people that are doing these plans are competent to do them? And that's really on some level what this whole signature stamp thing is how do we know the person doing that really understands what they're doing? And I don't know if we can come up with an answer, but I think it's not just the fire marshal that's asking this question, it's the local building officials going, I've got this document or this set of plans in front of me, how do I know this guy has any clue or girl has any clue about what they're doing? And so, again, that may be something that we all want to try to get together and see if we can give some guidance on how you determine that, but it's not just the fire marshal asking this question.
I agree.
and there's only certain building types that the fire marshal reviews.
Correct.
And then the second question is about truss design. If the truss designer should seal the drawings, or is the engineer's review stamp adequate? I guess the engineer committee can talk more about that.
Trust
The truss
designer
designer
should
should seal their
Just design.
And it ought to be by Tennessee.
Well, it's kind of similar to the sprinkler drawings.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta, come on.
Yeah.
I can show you where the heads I think should be, but.
Yeah, I mean, and whoever's in responsible charge needs to send it. You would think the designer of the truss is in responsible charge over unless the other person reviewed everything and feels good that they can do that.
Well, I recently had a project where there was a truss designer that had an engineer that was designing trusses. I don't know what happened to their engineer, because at the end of the day, they weren't sealed. And so we said, where's your seal? Well, we thought your structural engineer would do that. Our structural engineer just went, you thought that? And that was the end of that subject. So he would not even review them. The structural engineer said, nope. So it had nothing to do with any calculations. I'm not going to review them and seal your drawings. So that threw the project in the whirlwind. It got resolved, but our structural engineer did not review or stamp his drawing. Now, how he got them done is that's between him and his engineer.
This is a big problem apparently with the state fire marshal's office.
It is.
They're getting a lot of truss design drawings that are not sealed by Tennessee registrants.
We send them back all the time.
Yeah,
Well,
it's very common.
and not to belabor the subject, but I mean the argument that I get from these guys from time to time is, hey, you've got it on the computer. We just plug these numbers in and here it is. You know, why should we have to do all that? The computer does it. Well, fine, the computer does assist you, but you know, I think they should be sealed by the designer.
And when you get in the house, it's got that code, you go, what the computer did on that? It's a big problem. I mean, it's a big problem because you get most of your truss drawings you get for single families are the ones I've seen. I mean, it's done by the truss manufacturer.
Right.
Sometimes they got a person that knows what they're doing. Sometimes not. The house I built, I had to put some structural members in because there were some spans I could read. Let me think about that too. Before this big span 20, let's just add that thing just to be sure. Yeah, it just didn't look good.
They put that safety factor in there.
Well, when they show up and they're on the back of the truck when they're bouncing like this,
Right.
that doesn't give me that warmest, fuzziest feeling about everything. But that's just me. I know I'm a little worse.
I just didn't have the decking on them, that's all.
That's right. They didn't have to sit there already put together.
Well, you know, you're not required to have them sealed on a residential project. So, but then a commercial project that we're stick framing it out of wood. And
It's less than 5,000 square feet. You don't have to go there.
well, that's true, but this is a little more than that.
I know, but I'm
Yeah,
saying,
but, all right.
commercial, you don't
Yeah,
have to.
you don't have to, unless the local codes official decides that he needs it. In Chattanooga, they do. They just they hammer you. Probably so. So
We'll defer to the engineers, but in my opinion, the truss designer in Tennessee needs to be sealed by the designer who is registered in Tennessee.
But you all
And
see
the-
that a lot when you put them in your packets, that those are not sealed, correct? Or no?
If we get something like that submitted to us, turn it and send it back.
That's what I'm saying, but you get it initially and say,
Oh,
here's,
yeah.
this is ready, we're ready for you to put this in the package.
Yeah. And I don't think with the engineer of record putting his approval stamp on there, that probably has something in there that says he's reviewing it for, he's not responsible for it. In other
Right.
words.
Normally,
I don't think that means anything.
I think it's in the specs that it has to be a licensed Tennessee engineer or whatever.
We put that in our specs,
Yeah.
yes, but we don't get this back half the time.
yeah,
They try to, and we don't do a lot of metal buildings, but there are architects that seem like their entire structural design is metal buildings. Probably they're the ones that really need to look us Tennessee seal.
Well, I do agree we should require that.
So
Make a motion.
do we make a motion or do we defer this for more conversation like we just did on the
I
previous?
don't think you need a motion necessarily, because it'll be discussed in the Law and Rules
Okay.
Committee
Okay.
tomorrow as well, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be fine. And I think the last issue is intern titles.
Oh,
That
boy.
was discussed at the
Favorites.
August meeting. Yeah, we need to allow time for that. That's on page 38. So I can kind of summarize that if you would like.
That'd be nice.
Okay, yeah. So, again, to recap, AIA in December of 2016 issued a position statement supporting use of the titles architectural associate or design professional by interns that met certain requirements, such as a degree from a NAV accredited program, etc. A lot of states expressed opposition to that, saying that it would violate their laws for interns to use those terms. And there's on page 40, there's a survey that was conducted by NCARB showing that most jurisdictions have some heartburn over use of those titles. And then on page 41, you see some of the raw data behind the survey that NCARB conducted. And a lot of states don't specifically address use of titles, but of the states that do, the majority use either the title architectural intern or intern architect. And those are the two titles that are in the NCARB legislative guidelines, intern architect or architectural intern. So I think at the last meeting you wanted some information on what titles are other states using, and those appear to be the two most common. I mean, there's, I think, 3 jurisdictions that allow architect in training. Some just intern or intern architect, but the majority are architectural intern and intern architect. And we have an old policy that this board issued. Let's see, where is that? On page 71, a Title Act clarification that allowed intern architect. That's repealed now. That was adopted in 1999. It's been repealed. But we did allow intern architect at that time. So it seems like if you want to potentially amend the rules to allow specific title use by interns, those would be your 2 best options: architectural intern, intern architect, one or both.
Did you guys have what AI is saying?
Right, so Kate O'Neill, she came, I think, to the last board meeting. I was at a conference, and she sat in for AIA, and we talked about it at the board meeting. And, one of the questions was, and I didn't have the question, the answer to this question was, why was it repealed in 2015, actually, the intern architect? What was the reason for repealing it? But the board wanted to go ahead and address a statement regarding AA positions. Of course, we have to somewhat support it, but I'm going to read the memo and I'll give it to you, John, and I can email it or whatever. It says, thank you for allowing AIA Tennessee to provide its position on pre-licensure title. AIA Tennessee Board of Directors respectfully requests the following terms be considered for adoption at the state level in lieu of intern architect. So if you don't support intern architect and the associates, the AIA members don't like to be called interns. It is the opinion of the AIA Tennessee Board that these terms safeguard the term architect much in the same way intern architect does. While communicating to the public, the individual has met strenuous education requirements and graduated from an accredited school of architecture. These following terms also protect the term architect from fraudulent activity. And so they gave 4 terms: graduate architect, associate architect, architect in training, or apprentice architect, for possible thoughts and discussion. The board thanks you for supporting the term design professional. However, it is the opinion of the AIA Tennessee Board of Directors that architectural associate is a more appropriate pre-licensure term that can be used referencing individuals described in item 2 of the position statement below, which is talking about the degree from the NAAB or admit education experiences. AIA Tennessee is bound to the AIA Polo policies and position statements. However, the board is concerned about the recommendation of these titles due to the vagueness of the titles, the ability for the terms to be used by the public in another manner, and a lack of enforceability. We look forward to your continued dialogue and willing to provide any assistance the board can help you with on this matter. So essentially, they I'll give this to you. They were afraid that design professional is really not something that is protected. And of course, you all have relayed the fact that the term architect needs to be a little more protected. But that also that even if the people that are still working towards licensure be given, an architect in training or apprentice, that they have actually gone through some of the training and are working towards being an architect. And so they wanted to be able to have the fact that it does communicate with strenuous education requirements. And it's because, they're describing being called an intern architect, the public in general, including me, when I first started working for architects, was trying to figure out what an intern architect was, because I interned. And it was a totally different, two different languages. And so a lot of times the public, they'll go into an office and they'll say intern architect, and the first thing they think is, whoa, wait, I do not want to intern working on my project. And so that's the issue that gives a lot of people heartburn. So the board tried to come up with several other terms that maybe you all could discuss, that even if they aren't licensed, this is something that shows they have graduated from school and are working to be licensed. So I've got this on my computer if I need to.
And what was your recommended terminology again?
They asked that you all consider or discuss graduate architect, associate architect, architect in training, similar to the way engineers have engineering training, or apprentice architect.
Apprentice.
I know
The one that I lean towards is none of those. Unfortunately. And I'll tell you, what I would lean toward is architectural intern. And the reason I say that is architectural is a descriptive word. And all the rest of the things that I've heard said is it's intern architect, which means you're an architect. So, fact. And so I like the descriptive version of that better than the definitive version, however you want to say that. And so with me, saying architectural intern, and I know we've been in INCAR meetings discussing the use of the word intern, and they actually changed the IDP from intern development program to AXP, which is architectural experience. But I don't think they ever made the leap to taking out the word intern. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my opinion. I would, if it's a problem with telling somebody who you are or what you do, you graduate from architectural school and you're working to get your experience to be licensed, whether you've already taken the test or whether you got the experience to take the test. And so anything that says you're an architect of whatever version to me doesn't sound quite right.
Yes.
So of any of those, this is just my opinion, but architectural intern sounds like you're an intern in the architectural profession.
Well, a lot of the discussion at the INCAR meetings too has been, and this is discussion, I don't know what the statistics are, but there's a minority group of students who are offended by the word intern because they graduated from college and they're not architects. And there's a lot of pushback nationally on this. I don't know where it is, but you know, it's the change in the intern development IDP program. There was a huge discussion about that. Same issue. You had a group of people that just took offense to it because they didn't like the word intern. You know, you got to do what you got to do to get your license. Who cares what your name is? You know, which I don't think you should be called an architect, period, if you're not licensed. I don't like that word, architect. I would like an architectural associate. It's a whole lot better than architect, any kind of architect, because that implies you are an architect. So you think the person that's walking into your office is confused about an intern? Or so anything architect tells them that they're an architect. A graduate architect. I'm a graduate architect. Does that mean you got your master's? What does that mean? It's just all confusing. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm jumping my soapbox. I'm offended that they're offended. Excuse me. I'm a sensitive architect. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you and I, suffered through between school and being registered.
But your
I
generation
don't
is so
remember.
different, Frank.
I don't remember being a terrible hurt.
I was just looking.
nowadays.
I just got something yesterday from New York about they had changed theirs. Do you know what was it to design professional? John. I'm looking at you, John, as if you know
I don't
every
know.
other state, but
No, I'm
I
not
couldn't get logged on, but so I couldn't figure out what it was. But I just got a notice, but I think they changed it to design professional, like in Carp was saying.
Oh,
but
okay.
I was going to look and see.
What was the comment about the design professional? Frank, did you make a comment about you didn't like that term?
I think it's not descriptive. I think it
Is that
could be
okay?
anything.
Yeah, in the memo,
Do they support
it,
it?
they had a discussion, they were worried that it was too vague. I mean, as far as, being able to have, the title and the ability for other people to be called themselves, I can call myself a design professional.
Yeah.
So that was, the difference between someone that's graduated from architecture school versus actually going out and I'm a design professional.
Right.
So that's why they lean towards, of the two suggested, architectural associate would be a better term to use.
Yeah, the only negative part I have with the architectural associate, and I don't see it as much as I used to, but it used to be a lot of firms, well, ours, as a matter of fact, is so-and-so and so-and-so and associates, which was referring to non-partners but architects, what it referred to. I guess you could generalize that and say we need like, but I know at least in the past that was what but I could probably live with that version.
And Chad Pope was secretary of AAA Tennessee, and said he's offered to also come in on Friday if you want to discuss it. Regarding, I think he was here with Carol Pedigo several years ago, like I guess in 1999, when they approached the licensing board for discussion and approval of interim architect. And so he said he'd be happy to come and actually talk about the history and answer any questions that you might have about that specific term or any other terms related to interim architect.
Okay. That would be good.
Okay. I can ask him stuff.
Make it short.
Make it short.
Would-
Make it short. Right.
Yeah. So, for my clarity, as a board, we have to take action on this titling.
Right now, we don't have.
No, I mean to eliminate the confusion. But I mean, do we have to? Is it something that we're required to do? If we like the word intern, we can keep the word intern. Is that right? No, we can't even use that anymore.
You don't have any.
Yeah, we don't have any specific guidance.
No, that's been other than that. It's been appealed or whatever.
The statute prohibits use of the term architect by an unlicensed person.
But right now, the rule is repealed, right? So.
Well, that was a policy.
Okay.
And I think part of the reason it was repealed is because there was uncertainty about whether that kind of position could be adopted through a policy rather than through rulemaking.
Yeah.
That it would be more appropriate to address that through rulemaking than through a policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our department is trying to move away from policies that are not focused on internal procedures, anything that affects a licensee's ability to hold their license. such as like your continuing education hours, needs to be more clear and open to the public through rule instead of an internal policy. So really, the department as a whole is trying to only put things into policy that are like internal administration type procedures.
Yeah, at the time that was adopted, we were the board was sort of policy crazy. We did a lot of stuff through policy that really should have been done through rulemaking. So we're in the process of trying to change course, and we'll do a course correction and put more of those into rules.
Intern architect would be under a rulemaking procedure.
Probably.
And right now, we don't have a rule on intern architect.
Yeah. I think if we wanted to specifically allow certain titles, we would need to do a rule change to clarify the statute. Right.
John, I'm going to send you that memo.
Okay.
Send it to the rest of the committee.
Great.
So this is still unfinished business. Right, okay. So give me some guidance here, John. As the architecture committee, how do we proceed on
I
this?
guess just leave it open for further discussion.
But it will or will not be discussed at the board meeting.
Well, it'll be discussed at the board meeting. Okay. When you do your committee
Or
report,
open, yeah, okay.
yeah, that would be a great time to discuss it more with the full board.
So we'll get public and other board feedback on that.
Yeah, you can do that when you do your committee report on Friday.
Rereading it, they were pretty much. I'm reading the New York just because I just gotten it, and they were basically saying the same thing that you said. That they did not like the word architect. Basically, I'll just say that using that word. Yeah. Even architectural associate, they said, suggests an individual is an architect through its use of the adjective architectural and the implication that professional services are offered. Use of derivatives or combined terms of the word architect as an architectural designer and project architect are similarly misleading to the public and not permissible in New York. The second type of design, professional design in the New York State Business School, is someone who is licensed in New York as an architect, landscape architect, professional engineer, land, blah, blah, blah. So also not permitted. So.
I don't guess they say what is.
Yeah, they said a bunch of stuff that wasn't permitted. All right.
Okay. So we'll continue the discussion on this Friday. Right. Are there any other comments? We don't need a motion. Go ahead, Frank. Adjourn the meeting?
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second. No.
Motion is second. All in favor, aye. Motion carries. Oh, I'm sorry. Any no's?